Hey, what's going on? It's Matt Polis, and it's time for another episode of MeatSauce for Tuesday, March the 23rd, 2021. This is episode number 23. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, please consider giving the show a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. It would be awesome to get to 10 of those at some point over the next month or so. We are at 6 now. And also, the cool thing about Apple Podcasts is you can also leave, either questions or reviews on the show. So if you have any questions or any thoughts on the show, consider leaving a review along with the 5-star rating. And, as always, I really appreciate you listening to the show, and I hope the last week or so has treated you well. For this past weekend being the first weekend of spring, the weather did not disappoint. It was mid-60s and sunny here in Michigan, and it was a beautiful weekend to sit inside and watch basketball all weekend. I'm talking about March Madness here, people. It was in full effect this past weekend. And I know that I enjoy watching the tournament every year, and obviously we didn't have it last year. But after this past weekend, I think I realized I like it way more than I thought. One game would finish, and I would just immediately switch over to the next game, or the one that was, closest to being over. There's just like this sense of urgency from start to finish in every game, and you don't even have to be a fan of any of the teams playing, and they're just all so easy and fun to watch. And there have just been so many good games. And it seems like with each passing year, the lower seeded teams continue to shock these higher seeded teams. Like it's like these seeds don't really mean anything anymore. And I just wonder, when did that change? Because I feel like growing up, it was always like, 16 seeds, 15 seeds, really even 14 and 13. Like they never have a chance. And if they do, it just like, it's so rare. But now it just, every year, every passing year, there's just, I don't know if it's more and more talent being spread out to all of these schools across the country. I don't know what it is, but it is, it makes these games so fun. Obviously the first one that comes to mind from this past weekend is Oral Roberts upsetting, number 2 seed Ohio State. Ohio State definitely had their chances to win, but they missed some free throws late in the game, and even took, they took the last couple shots of the game and, missed them both. Just couldn't make them. And, I was happy to see Oral Roberts go on, then also beat the 7 seed Florida. I think I saw that this is just the second time that a 15 seed has made it to the Sweet 16, which is awesome. I mean, that's great. That's what you want. You want that madness. I've also been very shocked by the Big Ten and how poorly they have done. I mentioned last week that they had 9 teams in the tournament, and one by one, they're just getting knocked off the board. And, it shows you how much I know. Obviously, U of M winning last night, that was a great game for them. LSU is a really good team, so it was great to see at least a team from the Big Ten move on. I was definitely expecting Illinois to be in that conversation as well, but, that didn't happen. As I was preparing for this episode yesterday, I was watching the Oregon and Iowa game, and, man, Oregon is really good. Great outside shooting, so many three-pointers. Their defense is aggressive. The broadcasters had said that Oregon doesn't have a ton of depth and that their starters basically score all their points and they don't rotate guys a whole lot. So I'm curious to see how that plays out for them as they continue to play here down the stretch, as they play tougher teams and get to those high-pressure situations. Are they going to run out of gas? Because, they didn't play their first game in the tournament because VCU had to pull out due to COVID. So yesterday was Oregon's first game, and they looked super fresh compared to Iowa. So I'm curious, as they play more games here, with potential to play 2 this upcoming weekend, if they win their Sweet 16 matchup, then you kind of wonder what happens with them, especially if they don't have a ton of depth. And then you have Loyola Chicago also a team to keep watching. I didn't get to see their win over Illinois, but it definitely obviously caught me by surprise, and I'm sure caught a lot of people by surprise because I expected, again, Illinois to move very far in this tournament, especially watching them in the Big Ten championship game, against Ohio State. I definitely expect them to go further. I saw ESPN on their Instagram posted a photo of like the bracket for the Sweet 16, and there's so many lower seeds in it. I mean, you have a 15 seed in Oral Roberts, an 8 seed in Loyola Chicago, a 12 seed in Oregon State, an 11 seed in Syracuse, an 11 seed in UCLA, 7 in Oregon, 6 in USC. I mean, those aren't super low, but low if you're expecting to see like all 1, 2, and 3 seeds. But yeah, it was just a really fun weekend to watch basketball and kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit. And I know I'm talking about sports here at the beginning of the show, but it's just been such a big thing happening over the last few days. I couldn't help myself. All right, let's get into this week's edition of What's on the Shelf. Today we're taking a look at an extremely popular product that is known for its drinkability along with price. Out of Frankfort, Kentucky, we are diving into the Buffalo Trace Distillery and Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. The Buffalo Trace Distillery, owned by the Sazerac Company, has gone through a couple name changes over the centuries from Old Fashioned Copper Distillery to George T. Stagg Distillery, and is now widely known as the Buffalo Trace Distillery. The company claims that the distillery is the oldest continuously operating distillery in the United States, dating back to 1775. Yeah, 1775, before the U.S. was even a country. The Sazerac Company purchased the distillery back in 1992, and then the Buffalo Trace bourbon brand was introduced in August of 1999 after visitors of the newly named distillery asked why there wasn't a bourbon called Buffalo Trace. So they named the distillery that, but didn't have a bourbon to match that. That seems marketing 101 in my opinion. But from there, the company decided that it would go to the best floors in the best warehouses and find some of the best barrels, the best of everything apparently, that they could find, and use older whiskey and provide a robust, full-bodied flavor. And Buffalo Trace bourbon is said to be made of the distillery's #1 mash bill, which their mash bills are all disclosed, but some believe it to be at least made of 10% or less of rye. So I'm not sure why they keep their mash bills a secret, but I guess it kind of adds to the story and curiosity, I guess. They also have a #2 mash bill that they make some of their products with, again, with that mash bill being disclosed. So Buffalo Trace comes in at 90 proof or 45% ABV. It's not age stated, although they say it's at least 8 years. Most people seem to think it's somewhere between 8 and 10 years and a blend of all that. So typically the MSRP for this product is somewhere between $25 and $30. I just saw it actually over the weekend at Meijer for $26 for a 750 milliliter, which every time I go to Meijer, it's like always gone. I'm sure they don't have it anymore. But I bought a 1 liter bottle of it for $38 at my local liquor store, which to me is a pretty good deal for a whole liter. When you're spending $26 on a 750, you get obviously like double that for $10, $12 more. So some nosing notes for Buffalo Trace include caramel, vanilla, some light oak, which provides this very approachable, pleasant experience. On the palate, it has a nice sweet flavor with approachable notes of brown sugar and vanilla. I've read that people get a nice toffee note on the palate as well, but I don't really personally know what toffee tastes like. If I'm being honest, I don't really know if that's a thing. I need to get toffee or be able to start to recognize that, because I notice toffee is said to be in a lot of different bourbons and that sort of thing. For being 8 to 10 years old, it really has a nice light taste of oak. It's not overpowering, and some rye spice on the back end, but nothing that's going to be too much, especially at 90 proof. This is a very quintessential bourbon. That it doesn't offer a ton of uniqueness or complexity, but for the age, price point, and lower proof, this can be, again, a great daily sipper, which I seem to kind of every week be providing good daily sippers at good prices. I think it's a great next step for somebody who's wanting to try drinking their bourbon neat, or without ice. So if you're able to find Buffalo Trace in your area, I would recommend picking up a bottle of this just to try it and see if you like it. Again, it's not something that will blow your socks off, but its sweetness and approachability at $25 to $30 is worth it, especially if you haven't had it before. There's a large Buffalo Trace craze going on right now with a lot of their other products, but definitely their Buffalo Trace bourbon is by far probably the easiest to find on a regular basis. Everything else is allocated and really difficult to find because they're not able to meet the demand. I did see that they have like a $200 million investment in expanding the distillery to try and meet the demand. So hopefully, we probably won't see it for like the next 10 years, but hopefully eventually we'll start to see Buffalo Trace products way more, out there in stores and on the shelf and easily accessible, because right now they're just about impossible to find. So with that, get out and try some of that Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. All right, that's all I got for this week's What's on the Shelf. Let's get into some more sports. The NFL has signed a new 11-year media contract with a bunch of different networks. There's still more info to be released as time goes on here, but it's going to include ESPN/ABC taking on, more NFL games over the next few years, including the Super Bowl in 2026 and 2030. Amazon's also jumping into the action and is scheduled to take over Thursday Night Football in 2023, but can start in 2022 if Fox opts out of the final year of their contract. So it seems like every network kind of wants a piece of the NFL right now. It's like the one major sport that is continuing to thrive, and its viewership is either staying the same or growing year over year, whereas other sports are kind of losing their viewership a little bit. So the one aspect of the NFL that seems uncertain still is the future of the NFL Sunday Ticket. It was reported last week that this whole TV deal was going to move Sunday Ticket to ESPN Plus around 2023. And that is still what many people are expecting to happen as the DirecTV deal runs out in 2022. We had Sunday Ticket for the first time this past season. It was really awesome to be able to stream really any game you want, that's outside of your market. I do worry about ESPN's streaming capabilities, because I've watched a lot of games on their apps, and their streams have just been inconsistent and they buffer quite a bit, especially for big games like the national championship in football. I mean, the OSU versus Alabama game, there was a ton of lagging, buffering on the stream because I think, so many people were watching. So that makes me nervous for the NFL, but hopefully they're able to get that kind of figured out if it in fact does move to ESPN. I think Amazon would be a great place to house the Sunday Ticket. I think they would do a great job. In the few streams I watched this year on Amazon Prime, it was like really, really good, really well done. So we'll have to see what happens with that in the future, but NFL seems to be raking in the dough. Everyone wants a piece of the pie. There's also been a ton more NFL signings in free agency over the last week. Lots of teams have been getting in on the action to try and make their team better, which obviously everyone wants to do that. Some teams I think that have done some serious work this offseason thus far include the Patriots, the Browns, the Chiefs, the Giants, just to name a few. I mean, you also have the Bengals that have brought in a few guys on defense to longer-term deals, and just for them to be spending money and getting them on multi-year deals is a positive for them. They did also snag a couple offensive linemen and also cut Bobby Hart, which I know a lot of people were thrilled about. It felt like the Patriots, I didn't say this last week, I kind of didn't think about it, but the Patriots were signing it felt like they were signing one guy from every NFL team, like in the first couple days of free agency. It was crazy. They brought in two good tight ends in Jonnu Smith from the Titans and Hunter Henry from the LA Chargers. And then they went on to bring in some more wide receiver help for Cam Newton, along with a slew of defensive players, including Kyle Van Noy from the Dolphins and Matt Judon from the Ravens. I don't know if I said that last name right, but lots of moves by them. And I think they still draft a quarterback in the draft, even after signing Cam Newton to a one-year deal. Another team that's been signing a bunch of guys this offseason is the Houston Texans. Their process seems to be a little bit different because it seems like they're just kind of throwing a bunch of names against a wall and going to see what sticks. It's still unclear if they're going to trade Deshaun Watson at this point. They brought in quarterback Tyrod Taylor and traded for Bengals quarterback Ryan Finley, so who really knows what's going to happen. Again, they just seems like they're trying to just bring in a bunch of guys and see what works and what doesn't. Then you have the Browns, who have done, and I'm taking my bias out of it, they've done an incredible job. Like looking and knowing their needs heading into this offseason and what they've been able to do to make their team better. I mean, I've said before they needed to make the defense better, period. Specifically the secondary, another guy to go opposite of Myles Garrett, and then they go out, excuse me, and they get safety John Johnson from the Rams and cornerback Troy Hill from the Rams, which they had the best defense in the NFL last season. So they signed both of them to multi-year deals. They're both in their mid-20s, and I think the contracts are relatively team-friendly, So, and then they also brought in defensive lineman Tack McKinley, just a one-year deal for him. I know Tack has some question marks, but also has a lot of upside, so kind of that low-risk, high-reward type of thing. They also brought in Malik Jackson at the defensive tackle position after losing Larry Ogunjobi to free agency. He signed with the Bengals. And then another great signing for them is at the linebacker position with former Colts linebacker Anthony Walker. Super excited for him. Coming from, again, another guy coming from a great defense. So serious kudos to general manager Andrew Berry. Just has done a phenomenal job. He's seriously making things happen, and he's kind of flying under the radar, for how well they are doing on the front office side of things, which is great. I'm totally okay with that. For too long, we were the joke or the laughing stock of the league when it comes to like front office and head coach. So I'm totally fine with there being radio silence about how great they're doing. Real G's move in silence like lasagna. Let's see. And then to round out last week, they re-signed wide receiver Rashard Higgins to a one-year, $2.38 million deal. So excited to have Hollywood Higgins back to pair up with Baker. It's clear that they have a great relationship, like great chemistry on the field, off the field. Then they're also going to have Kadero Hodge back, along with OBJ, as he continues to recover from his torn ACL. So I'm really excited for that Browns offense next year. Year two of the same offensive system, and actually having a normal training camp will obviously help a ton. And then you add those pieces to the defense, and the Browns are looking legit. It's really exciting. And this is even before the draft. So if they can get some quality guys in the draft, that will take us into training camp with really, really high expectations, if I'm being honest. Let's see. Moving on to some Reds news. Luis Castillo was named the opening day starter for the April 1st matchup against the St. Louis Cardinals. This really comes as no surprise to me, especially with Sonny Gray working through some back spasms. And then some good news on the bullpen side of things. Left-hander Amir Garrett pitched in his first inning of the spring and struck out the side like he does. And Garrett is working towards, being the Reds' closer in 2021. He's basically said that the job is his, which I love. I love that level of competition, challenging the other guys to come take the job from him. Even though there's been no announcement or formal announcement about who's going to be the closer, he's like, nope, it's mine. Come take it from me. So I love that. He also kind of has that attitude and swag that a closer, usually has, which will add to some serious excitement at the end of ball games. Lucas Sims also pitched his first live action of the spring, striking out 2 batters. He said he feels good and is, quote-unquote, ready to roll. So I'm really excited for him this season. He was a huge part of the bullpen last year, and turning around the struggle that they had at the beginning of the season. He has such quick arm action, puts a ton of spin on the ball. So if you can't tell, I'm a big Lucas Sims fan. Let's see. Joey Votto also rejoined the club after testing positive for COVID-19, which is good news. The Reds have 7 more games this spring before they break camp and head to Cincinnati for the start of the season. The biggest thing you want is just for the team to break camp healthy. It seems like they have gotten a little healthier, but they're not as healthy as I would like them to be. So hopefully over the next week or so, they can get close to 100% and be ready for the opening day game. I did see, I don't think I said anything about this last week, but Eugenio Suarez has made the move over to shortstop. I don't know if that's going to be, it feels like that's the way the season's going to start, and maybe with injuries, you have Jonathan India up there too, which he's been a huge surprise. Maybe I did talk about this. I can't remember. The weeks are just all a blur. So really looking forward to Jonathan India joining the team, Eugenio at shortstop, and kind of rolling with that for now and seeing how that goes. But it's going to be so great for the team to have fans in the stands, for the first time in what seems like forever. I mean, we have so many new guys on the team from last year that are back this year that the team, fans haven't even gotten to see in person. So I'm really hoping, to make it down to Cincy for a game this season. I love the stadium. It's such a fun atmosphere. Lots of things to do. Obviously watch the game too, but, really cool beer selections, just a ton of stuff to kind of walk around and see as well. So really looking forward to when that can happen. All right, I think I will have some early MLB season predictions for next week's episode, based on what teams did this offseason, how they've done so far this spring. So be ready for that. I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for joining me. If you've been watching March Madness, let me know who you think is going to win the tournament or who you have enjoyed watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the show. Don't forget to give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.